In the 1920s, a famous limerick summed up the way most people felt about modern art and literature and science and all that crazy stuff. It went like this. I don't like the family name Stein. There's Epp and there's Gert and there's Ein. Epp's statues are junk, Gert's writing is bunk, and no one can understand Ein.
Well, the truth is that even today, very few of us can understand Ein. The difference between now and the 20s, though, is that we can see concrete ways in which our lives have been changed by Einstein and the new physics he introduced. That's one way, of course. This is another. Some people might say they're about equal in destructiveness. But the new physics also has had an enormous effect on our thinking about many seemingly unrelated subjects. About life after death, for example, and on our ideas of the spiritual in general. We haven't yet come to terms fully with its meaning for any of those things.
Tom Harpur, theologian, Rhodes Scholar, and journalist, knew he would have to take into account the shifting paradigms of science when he was researching his book, Life After Death. In particular, the new avenues opened up by Einstein and those who have followed him since.
Sooner or later, we will have to take new physics into account. First, though, let's take a brief look at what exactly it is that we're leaving behind.
The Newtonian worldview, which developed in the 18th century, saw the universe as a clockwork mechanism. That is to say that, in some sense, if there was a deity, and Newton was in fact a believer, a deep believer, so he believed that there was a God, but that God wasn't necessary for the continual working of the universal mechanism. God, in a sense, started the mechanism, but the mechanism itself ran by self-consistent internal laws. Those were the laws of nature, and in Newton's case, he felt that he was the one that God was giving a direct pipeline to discover what these internal laws were.
Right. The laws of nature, like what goes up, must come down. Remember that celebrated apple? What's really interesting about that incident today is not so much the apple falling, but the apple itself. Thick, hard, and above all, solid. In a way that represents the entire worldview of Newtonian physics. The working of a great machine whose products were the tangible fruits of man and nature. And if they fell on you, they could hurt.
Now, this conception was right up through the 19th century. And it turned out that there were certain puzzles, which were thought at the time to be minor puzzles in physics, which couldn't be resolved. One of these had to do with the speed of light. Now, Einstein's new conception of how to talk about the speed of light led to a whole new understanding of the relationship between matter and energy. In fact, that famous relationship, the one that everyone knows, E equals mc squared, is the basic relationship that describes the relationship between energy and matter. You have m multiplied by the speed of light squared giving you energy. What people forget is that it's an equation. And not only can you read it from the direction of a little bit of mass giving you an enormous amount of energy, but it's an equation of creation as well. That is to say that if you have an enormous amount of energy, that energy can be used to create solid mass. So we know that if you start out with pure energy, that pure energy can create solid matter. We do this in the laboratory all the time. Every time they run the machine in Brookhaven in New York, they create solid matter out of pure energy. It turns out that that equation is necessary for our understanding the creation of the universe itself. Because without that, we would not understand how matter could have formed.
We've all heard about the Big Bang, which created the universe 15 billion years ago. The Big Bang was a creation of space and time, as well as matter in the universe. It was also, if you read the equation from the E, energy, to the M, matter side, what led to matter. The creation of protons, neutrons, atoms, molecules, proteins, and eventually us.
what we realize is that quantum mechanics goes beyond the possibilities that we had in classical physics, beyond to the point that we can now talk about the notion of the creation of the universe out of nothingness. We can talk about the whole notion of our being participants in the universe.
A broader view of reality. A participatory universe which we're all constantly creating and recreating. Parallel dimensions, and most important, the notion that the building blocks of the universe are units of energy, not solid pieces of material. That we are all essentially energy that can be neither created or destroyed, but endlessly transformed. So where does that leave us? On one hand, scientists like Professor Mallet say with careful precision that paranormal phenomena, such as the near-death experience, and I'm quoting now, are not inconsistent with modern physics. Modern physics does not say it is not allowed. In other words, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in Isaac Newton's philosophy. Realities behind reality that remain to be discovered. Science fictions that may well prove to be fact. Score one for the paranormal, you might say.
The first words God speaks in the Old Testament are, "Let there be light." And for human beings, light has always represented the most powerful natural force of energy. Many ancient civilizations worship the sun. Near-death experiencers almost always see a brilliant light. Church choirs sing about it. We speak about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Icons through the ages have been surrounded in a halo of light. But now quantum physics has demonstrated the presence of other, more subtle and more powerful energies than light. Do our halos become electron patterns? Are we simply a random association of electrons? Of course, there are people who claim to have a private pipeline to these brave new worlds. There are artists who paint auras, mediums, fortune tellers, New Age mystics of every make and model. But most of us in the mainstream have yet to come to terms with these new realities. Sooner or later we will have to, although there are some scientists who feel that the new physics has little application to paranormal phenomena at all.
People like to bring in fundamental physics as though it sort of makes their idea better. So you often get people talking about other worlds, parallel universes, and saying, there, the physicists believe in parallel universes. But the physicists don't believe in them in the sense of another world that my soul can go to. What they're talking about is solving some problems in the maths that comes out of quantum mechanics and so on. Maybe, as everything changes in every moment, there are parallel universes created all the time in every moment. That would not at all imply that I could go from one of those to the other. So it's a misuse of physics, and you get that kind of misuse of physics all over the place. They're saying, we can't understand these difficult questions about mind and consciousness and so on in this world, so we'll make another world. They just ad hoc make up what that other world is like without any way of predicting what's going to happen from that, or in any way pinning it down, making sense of it. I think it's a cop-out, and I think we're best not to have that. What we need is a better understanding of the way this world functions and how it can give rise to experience. That's a tall order.
On the other hand, a lot of people might find Dr. Blackmore's refusal to deal with paranormal reality another kind of cop-out. But of course, modern science takes in more than physics. Neurobiologists, for example, have made enormous discoveries about the brain in recent years, and they too have opinions about its role in paranormal experiences.
The pursuit of the sense of self is the last great challenge to neuroscience. I mean, really, if you think about it, the last major challenge is what is it that makes us an individual? Even though there's 6 billion of us, each one feel we're unique and similar, or singular, I should say. The idea that there is a sense of self, and that's what most people really mean when they talk about consciousness and awareness. They're talking about the sense of who they are. Penfield and others have tried to pursue it. In the out-of-body experience, individuals can detect information at a distance. That you can verify. But the person's explanation for how they got the information, that is, they're out of their body, may not necessarily be valid. In other words, getting information and getting details may not necessarily be the same as the person's explanation for how they got it. And I think the information that is obtained during the near-death experience about individuals in the car with them or individuals even at a distance away suggests that the brain is still very active. And we do know, without evoking any kind of mysticism, that during certain altered states, the brain can obtain information from a distance through mechanisms which are clearly not evident at this time, but suggest that the brain is picking up information that's much more expansive than typically imagined. One thing about science has been that the phenomenon of change. People have always had experiences of their self leaving the body. That's pretty clear. What does change is the explanation. My guess would be that the final explanation won't be religious, and it won't be contemporary science. It'll be something we have never even imagined.